Okay, so Jim, you had collaboration that these two girls had seen a couple of Sasquatches in the area, or what they identified with that, where you guys, you and your family friends had seen footprints that kind of stopped kind of oddly in one place that either makes you suspicious that someone was doing it deliberately, or as you have many reports of Bigfoot, they just sometimes, like ghosts, they just vanish at a certain point or something, or a UFO picks them up,
Yeah,
maybe.
right.
Who knows? At the ranch there, it sounds like a place where that might happen,
Yeah, right.
But so, so I know that this story is probably, it's not through evolving. Well, what story of this type ever stops, really?
Yeah.
So I'll let you get back on to what happens next year. It's very interesting.
Well, it's so funny to revisit this. Y- no matter how many times I um share this story, and I don't share it often. I haven't even actually shared it with my own podcast audience. Um, it takes me back into some complicated, complex feelings about how I felt about myself, about my career, about belief, um, about reality. Uh, I am again getting to that point in the story where I reached the apex, the sort of the dark night of my soul. Um, and so after, you know, basically feeling like we're getting punked by the universe, you know, um, we're being shown everything. It's not as if, hey, let me, sprinkle some mystery in here and you see one strange light and then you feed off of the vibe, and then you realize that it's about spending time with your family in this beautiful place. It's like, no, no, we're gonna show you everything. We're gonna give you everything. We're gonna give you like exceed your expectations, like some sort of supernatural amusement park or something. We would have been throwing up on the rides at this point. It was just so much. And so
Feels Disneyland of the gods.
yes, there we go. I found it. I found it. I found the place. So, and I'll get back to why it's also complicated me drinking from this mug and telling the story in a second as well. It's like has another level of humanity that's complicating it personally. So the last night we're there, we all look around and we go, listen, we've all been together this whole time. Maybe it's best we split apart tonight and we just take some time to, I don't know, do whatever we want, like spend some time alone with this place and see what happens. Um, so we all split up. We went into different sectors of the field. I went to the spot that was popular for meditation. And it was popular for meditation because it had a little sort of uh, uh, a tent like structure set up without any walls. It was a string,
Mhm.
very colorful string that was set up into a triangle shape with uh, sort of containers of energy,
Oh,
energy
oh,
pucks. So I was just going for it at this point in time. I was like, give me the crystals, the orgon. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. And so I hadn't
so that's
actually.
like the little. So that was like those little buckets with a tube sticking out of them there. The
Yeah,
orgone. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And the metal shavings that they've put into a like an epoxy or something. It's like a plastic puck with all sorts of.
Yeah.
There's like a whole That's that's something I haven't ventured down, but there's a whole thing about Oregon energy, and if any of your listeners are, I apologize for offending anybody by being flippant about any of this. I'm not trying to, but I'm just trying to not take myself too seriously in this, as it just continues to get stranger for me. Um, so I'm sitting there, and I found this position where I could look at the mountain, and I hadn't meditated and since I was forced to in theater college. I was a theater major, and they forced you to do all these sort of things like movement class and meditation and yoga, and so I had to develop a practice for a credit. And so here I was, using that skill set that I had paid too much money for. And I said, I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna watch the mountain. I'm gonna focus on my breathing. I'm gonna keep a soft gaze at the mountain, and I'm gonna do a little meditation. And I did a meditation where, you start to feel your spine burning, and you're connected to the earth while your kind of energy is like shooting out. And so I did this for about 15 or 20 minutes as the sun was going. The sun had gone down. The sky was getting darker, and through my soft gaze, I started to see one of those lights on Mount Adams. And this light started to emerge from the darkness, and this sort of amber yellow light became brighter, and then it would fade out. And so it kept kind of doing this. And after just doing it for 5 or 6 times, I then realized with my sort of conscious self that every time I would breathe out as I was focusing on my breath in this meditation, that that thing would start to glow as if an ember.
Hmm.
Um, every time I would breathe in, as I was breathing in, this thing would get smaller and go away. And I sat there in this field with this mountain for 20 minutes, breathing in and out of that light. And I've never, nothing in my life has ever been the same since. Um, to me, it was absolute direct communication with something else in a way that felt so profoundly personal that it was staring into the heart of me. And it was, I still can't unwrap or unpack like what the meaning of that was. And maybe there wasn't even a meaning per se in the way that we search for words to create metaphors or myth through. The fact of the matter is it fundamentally changed me, and in the way that I kind of I went back home, you know what I mean? Well, first of all, what broke the
Mhm.
meditation, I would have kept doing it, but my uncle, I could feel him, shifting up towards me, uh, and he taps my shoulder and says, "Hey, man, I don't want to bother you, but there's a giant spider above your head." So sure enough, I look up and there's one of the largest spiders I've ever seen in my life. It was about to make me its home. Um, so mystics may say there's some greater meaning there animalistically, but Brent, it that experience, um, it shifted my perspective. It it allowed me, I guess, I don't know, the it gave me a hall pass to change my life, I think. I went back,
Yeah.
I quit my job. I said that I'm going to commit everything I can to the podcast. I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to figure out how to use these skills that I amassed over these years and just put them into things that I care about. And I also thought, for years at that time, I had been talking to experts and witnesses that had their own story, and I was doing it as someone who could potentially, but I'm an empathetic person. I could empathize with what that feeling was and the quality and nature of that. But I really didn't know until this happened. I felt, and so it gave me a different perspective on the work I was doing too, and it assured me that the path to go would be to be in the field as much as possible, and not let myself sit behind a desk anymore, but to be out as much as possible and to be with people and share space and help other people try to tell their story as best as possible, because I believe there's a profound power in human beings sharing stories together. And yeah, so yeah, that's changed everything.
Wow. Well, that's quite an experience. and for 20 minutes to observe that as you breathed in and breathed out, this light would fluctuate along with your breathing. Yeah, it suggests to me anyway, definitely a psychic connection, focused, connected with you, interacting. And then, people have described having, these experiences with strange lights or beings where there might be a kundalina type experience or experience with their chakra centers or
Mm,
things. And it interacts at some biological, psycho spiritual manner,
mm,
and of course that's also something you hear in religious experiences
yeah.
and shamanic things and things.
Hmm.
It's so many things to look at. That's um, you know I I even was got interested in the Peruvian whistling vessels
Mm,
that the ancient Peruvians used to make pre-Columbian before the Spanish arrived and put the whole thing down. Um, but That was a widespread practice for about 2,500 years, and actually, I've got some replicas of these these whistles, and I've done presentations with them, and a lot of people, especially it seems like people who are psychic uh, and contactees, it really opens them up.
oh wow.
And it I was looking for um, Betty Adrison Luker was at a conference where I had four of these whistles placed like in the four corners of this big conference
Hmm.
center because she's a well-known UFO contact experiencer,
Sure.
and she had this incredible experience of seeing this large eagle-like behind this uh, large conical stone with fire at the bottom of it. I mean, it was a powerful vision, whatever it
Wow.
meant. And she even drew it out later and um, sent me the drawing she did, very detailed.
Wow.
Because as you know from reading the books about her, she was an incredible artist.
Yeah,
It
very
seems
much
as
so.
a good a good number of the experiences are, and uh,
Oh, that's pretty amazing that you have a sketch
yeah,
from her,
I
considering
thought
how
I, I I thought I had it
wow.
around here somewhere.
Oh my
Here it
gosh, that's
is,
amazing.
and yeah, it had a fire at the base, and
Wow.
it's yeah, um,
That's so cool.
and and I'll share an experience I had when I was first exposed to the whistles, and then from this lady who spent over a year in Peru and studying shamans down there. She's a psychotherapist, lives over in North Carolina, and I got to go up on stage down here in Florence, Alabama, at a college thing that I helped to arrange her to come down here, and she's originally from that area.
Hmm.
And so got several of my friends and together, and we all went down and supported her. And she did a slide presentation, and she had these Peruvian whistles, and she let us come up on stage and blow them. And one guy even claimed he's into shamanism and such and UFOs, and he claimed that when he was blowing the whistles, that he actually went out of the body and found himself in Peru, coming up out
Hmm.
of a body of water.
Oh,
I
wow.
got in. I got interested in them originally because of a Native American friend who we used to go to her sweat lodges down in Alabama,
Hmm.
and she got interested in the whistles when she was at a harmonic convergence event here in
Hmm.
Tennessee back in 1987, and she and others were on top of this flat top ceremonial Indian mound,
Hmm.
and someone brought the whistles and they were blowing them, and she had this vision of being at Machu Picchu in Peru back back at some time in the past. She'd never actually been there, but she recognized her from pictures and books and things, and said that she was wearing this long robe, and there was like I think like a golden sun disk or something by attached around her navel by a belt, and it had a vibration to it, and there was like a spaceship overhead, and this was some sort of like past life memory. And
Oh,
you
wow.
know, what really bothered her was that suddenly she heard other people talking about seeing the very same type of thing, and she thought, "Wait, this is my vision. What are these other people?" and and so sometimes people have these visions, as I found out, when you're blowing these whistles, and
Hmm.
they are like um, I was over in Memphis visiting my friend Dr. Greg Little, psychologist, author, who's he and uh, a British friend of his, Andrew Collins, recently wrote a book called Origins of the Gods, which
Yeah.
contains a lot of the stuff that we're talking about.
Hmm.
Keel had a tremendous influence in both of them, and so they're a lot of their stuff they're definitely Keelian, and we were all together, and I had 7 whistling vessels. They're replicas of the Chimu culture vessels from Peru, and we went out on a pontoon in this lake, and we were blowing the whistles. And then afterwards, Andrew and Greg and another guy who lives locally there over in Memphis and myself saw a spinning vortex in our mind's eye. And we saw it a little differently. I mean, like for one person, it might have been like water, spinning. Another one, it was like an energy, but it was all, we all identified as like a spinning vortex. And then I asked, well, what direction was yours going in? Okay, what was direction? We all saw it going in the same direction. And Andrew, who's really studied a great deal about shamanic cultures. In fact, you'll read in this book, Origin of the Gods, that he even has visited a lot of these places in different foreign countries and was down in a cave with archaeologists of a shamanic site about 400,000 years old.
Oh
And,
my gosh.
I mean, this stuff, we knew it went back a ways, but it goes back even further when we,
It's
we realized. So anyway, I'm sure that would have blown Keel's mind back in the day. But
right.
but the thing that happened to me after blowing the first whistles, my first time, I wanted, and my wife Joan, we did a 2-hour session each with the lady from Peru, Bonita, and she did a 2-hour light body integration, which is like lining your chakras, energy centers, and you while you're doing that, you're laying down and visualizing um, and she's talking about all these names of deities and things, and she wants to know what you're experiencing. And anyway, it was toward the very last of it. I mean, I was getting little mental impressions and things, but the last of it, it was like a motion picture screen. I mean, I was looking at a landscape like a hillside, and these giant rocks came up out of the ground, kind of like in that illustration a little bit. And they were
Wow.
like 2 rows of them, and then it's like I'm up in the sky, going higher and higher, and I'm looking down at a mountaintop.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that was pretty profound. But what really happened a few days later, I'm laying in bed, and the sunlight is shining, and it's early morning, and I see a reddish orange glow around the end of my bed,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. And also, I'm experiencing a physical sensation, and it's around my sexual organs.
Hmm.
Yes, and I'm thinking this is pretty odd, and I close my eyes and I'm seeing like different visions of things, and and eventually it kind of stopped. But my daughter has had like premonitions, seen different ghost things for years. She's kind of our family psychic. So I'm
Every
I'm
family
I'm
needs
ask,
one.
I'm I'm asking her about but I'm not coming right out and telling her. I'm just said around my solar plexus area, I had this strange sensation, and there was this light, and she proceeds to tell me. I had a dream a few days ago, about 3 or 4 days. You went in the store, and I told mom, and so I got her to confirm it. Of course, after she told me this, but what it was is she had this dream that we had. Uh, she was expecting us home, and her grandmother was there with her. She gets a phone call, and it's me telling her that her dad and mommy are going to be a little late coming home because my sex chakra was opened by the Peruvian whistling vessels. And she's telling my wife about this, telling her mom, and they're chuckling about it, but they never told me about this until I mentioned about my experience. And
Oh
I'm
my
thinking,
gosh.
what a wild coincidence.
Oh, that is hilarious, Brent.
So yeah,
That's great.
but there was
I love how they knew
there was
before you. You know what I mean? Like that's real.
yeah, and it's and then of course I wrote to the therapist. I told her, and she says, well, these things, the energy goes where it needs to go. Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
I'm unblocked now, I guess.
Yeah, right, right. Oh my god, that's
Anyway,
hilarious. Oh, that's
um,
so great.
but I was not a person who was really big on chakras and stuff, but
Mm,
it's one of those things like your experience. It kind of opens you to consider things that you didn't really take
yeah.
seriously before.
Mhm.
And what I love about the Peruvian whistles is it's something that I can take when I'm doing a talk, and I can say, okay, now if you're ready for a kind of a shamanic type experience, an altered state of consciousness, these are sonic tools from ancient culture that actually can create altered states. I can't promise what's going to happen. It may just be a good feeling you get. You relax and kind of zone out for a while, or something else might happen. Surprise!
Right.
and believe me, if it doesn't happen right now, it may come to you later.
Right. Oh boy. I
Yeah.
gotta figure out where to get one of these whistles, Brent.
Well, there's a Don Wright out in or there was out in Silver City, New Mexico, who used to uh, used to make them. Yeah, he has a little pottery place at his home, and he's got a long list. It took me about a year to get my set of 4 from him.
That is so
But
cool. So, did you have experience in sort of playing those type of instruments before you got them? And would you say that you can, or play some tunes on those as well? And I mean, I know that they are, of
oh
course, sonic tools,
no,
right? But
they don't have any like an ocarina or something holes
mm,
for changing pitch or whatever.
hmm
They're just straight blowing, and the guy who discovered this property of them in 1972, archaeologists knew they had a whistle quality to them,
mm,
but they never thought anything of it. But he bought one at an auction. It was an actual Peruvian Chimu culture vessel, not a replica. It was the real deal, and he bought it at an auction for about $45.
hmm.
And he had it sitting on the shelf, and he's home alone one day, and he thinks, well, I'm just gonna take this off the shelf and blow it. And when he did, he had an out of the body experience. Ta-da! He was flying among the stars.
Oh, oh man,
and and
wow.
he came and then he came out of it, and he was in like a sweat, broken sweat, and he's just
Hmm.
sitting there by himself in his home, and he has the whistling vessel in his hands, and he's like, well, I've got to find out what this is about. So he went to a museum in New York, somewhere in New York, and they had the whistles. And not only that, the guy took him to a back room, and there were all these shelves with all these clay whistling vessels with
Oh my gosh.
you know, they actually, a lot of them have faces on them, and all these faces looking back at him,
Oh wow.
and he went to he went out to California. He went on a journey there, and he actually uh, went to some college out there, and they gathered up 77 of the whistles, and they hooked hoses up to them, air hoses, and blew them, and they had meters to detect the frequencies. And there was a paper written up by the college about the study of them. But
Wow.
he wrote a book later about his journey. And the guy that I got my whistles from, Don Wright out in New Mexico, he actually had experience in 1980 where he was interested in how different religious cultures. He was training to be a psychotherapist in Boston
Hmm.
College, and one of his professors says, "Well, I got some Peruvian whistles. Come by my house some night. We're going to be blowing them, and you're interested in how people have these experiences, religious experiences, or shamanic experiences." And well, let me just briefly say, his experience was of walking into a room, the whistles are being blown, and all of a sudden he sees this vortex in the middle of the room, um, and it's based on whatever the frequency of the blowers, the high pitch, the low pitch, it would kind of change its intensity. And he,
Whoa.
after a while, he jumped up and he ran down the hallway, and then somebody was strumming a guitar, and the guitar noise uh, brought him back to reality. He didn't
Yeah.
feel he was feeling like, um, I think this was the point where he was feeling like somebody had stuck a straw in his head, and there was like these bubbles at the top of his head there. And
Oh
I think,
my gosh.
and so he found the professor, and he says, uh, "Hey, I think you need to back up here." He says, "There's something about these whistles. I think they're um, tapping into another dimension. I don't, we may not know what we're doing here." And so later he's he's sitting in this room, and there's all these people sitting around just talking, on these couches, and one by one they start to drift out. And next thing he knows, he's alone. But there's like this. Suddenly, there's a black panther in the room, and it's circling around the chairs and looking at him, and he's like, "Holy cow!" you know. So he gets
Yeah.
up and he tries to keep a chair between him and this big black, panther, and he had no idea that that sort of thing was a prominent feature like in South America culture. That
Wow.
they had,
Right.
but you know, he was just beginning his journey. He also has been to Peru and such and studied, and that's why he ended up making the whistles himself.
Yeah.
And
What a story. Oh my gosh.
yeah, and then let me add this: when I interviewed uh, this Rick Strassman, who wrote DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and he had
Mhm.
all these people who tried this Peruvian mixture of, the ayahuasca,
Mhm.
uh, the DMT type chemical in the pineal gland, presumably that may be the culprit here. And
Mhm.
so he was doing this to about 60 volunteers over a 5-year period. And so after I did the interview with him, I wrote to him and I said, "By the way, I read in your book where you thought certain people chanting certain frequencies might vibrate parts of the brain like the pineal, might release a chemical. Um, have you ever had any experience with the Peruvian whistling vessels?" He said, "Yeah, there was a guy came by here, and he 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 had some. I forgot what his name was, but they were very psychedelic." And so I wrote back and I says, "Was it Don Wright?" "Yeah, that's the guy." You know, he says, um, "Yeah, he was one of my volunteers in the experiment." So then I I contacted Don Wright and I says, "Gee, I didn't know this about you." So I you know asked him to write up a little thing about his DMT experience, which he did.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. Because in his book, Rick Strassman writes about how some of the people described almost like alien type beings, like physical examination thing on a table,
Yeah.
and
Right.
he noted that he didn't expect that in the results, and all these people were saying, "Oh, this," he'd approach him at first and say, "Tell me about your hallucination or your," and the people, every one of them it seemed was saying, "No, this was more real than real. This we were really interacting with something here." They were
Yeah.
convinced. So he had the Dr. Strassman had to sort of change his approach.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, they were going to get some people from John Mack's study, the well-known Harvard psychiatrist who wrote 2 books on alien abductions,
Hmm.
because they often heard this strange sound in their head, similar
Mm.
to what the people on the DMT would experience. And
Yeah.
he
Right.
wanted to see how they identified if they did some DMT with Dr. Strassman, but unfortunately, um, you know, he died. Dr. Mack did prior before they could actually conduct that study. But
Yeah.
I
Mm.
think that question is still out there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
John Hopkins did a big study recently about psychedelics, DMT experiences, and noted that like the uh, Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Extraordinary Experiences, their alien contact experiences in their survey, their experiences were very similar to people that they had studied, like DMT.
Hmm.
So I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty interesting, even though that Mac never was able to join Strassman in that study. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Right. Wow.
um,
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
yeah,
Where was that John Mack Terrence McKenna crossover back then? Like, where did that, like, why didn't, you know what I mean?
yeah. Um, it's there. That was interesting too. uh, let me let me pause this here. Just